Hi, everybody, and welcome to the third day of the 2021 Texas Soccer Summit. My name is Chris Bils, the co-founder and senior writer for the Striker Texas, a new soccer outlet covering soccer across the Lone Star State. And like I said, this is day three. I hope you've been enjoying all of our content so far during the 2021 Texas Soccer Summit. But right now, we've got a very interesting panel. We're going to talk about youth soccer during COVID, keeping youth soccer safe during the pandemic. And joining me today from Houston is Simon Boddison, the Director of Soccer Operations for the Dynamo Dash Youth Soccer Club. Simon, thanks so much for coming on and talking about these crazy times we've all been living in and sort of having to get used to for almost a year now.
Well, thank you very much for the invite. It's great to be on the show and sharing what we've done and what we continue to do within the youth soccer area.
Yeah, so let's start get the lay of the land a little bit for folks who aren't quite familiar. I know everybody knows the Dynamo and the Dash, the pro teams, but just how many kids do you guys serve over there in the Houston area? And tell me a little bit about the overall operation of the club.
Yeah, we've got the youth segment of the club is we have about 6,500 players at the moment from the age of 3 to 18 at multiple levels of soccer, different ages and abilities. We bring them in at a very small age, at the age of 3.5 for our rec programs and our soccer camps. And then we offer a soccer service to all those ages, all the way up to 18, through the high school years, and then they bounce into the college side. So we do also have a disability program. So we're kind of a full service soccer program for the Houston market. So we're over east, north, south, west. We have programs set up in all the 4 geographic areas of the city. And I use the phrase soccer never sleeps, and it certainly doesn't with us because we're continually growing, expanding, and providing a service for whoever basically wants to get involved with this fantastic game of soccer.
Yeah, you say that soccer never sleeps, and we're going to talk about a period when it almost felt like it did, but I'm sure maybe you weren't getting a ton of sleep back in March and April. What are your memories of March 11th when kind of the world shut down, and what were the plans that were in the works for the Dynamo and Dash youth club that weekend, and then how did that sort of change? Like, just take me through the early days of this thing and what it was like.
Yeah, that's a loaded question a little bit. It was a unique way of life that started middle of March for us as a youth soccer club and for our customers, our members, our families. It was very different. So we basically shut our operations down March, April, May. We stayed at home. We were on lockdown. Our players were at home. We didn't train. And really it was a time that we've never experienced before. So in terms of planning, I think the first thing we did was reaching out and connecting with our players and their families, showing that naturally we cared for what was going on. We wanted to connect with all our players and our families and basically ask the question, were they okay? Was there anything that we could do to help? And could we be a supporting factor? Because we are a family. We've got a large amount of players out there. So we actually had our coaching staff personally call every single player. They were involved in a huge amount of Zoom calls that we set up so we could connect on a weekly basis, team by team. So the first thing was purely, it wasn't really a soccer side of things. It was reaching out to the players to see how they were handling this unique way of life. And was there anything that we could do to help them? So we kind of started with that process. And as I've stated, we were closed down. Our offices were closed down March, April, May. So we all worked at home as a staff. We had over 100 employees that were now getting used to using Zoom and speaking in front of a computer screen. So we had to find ways of how could we connect with our players and keep them interested in the game, to provide a service for them, which was a connection with the game of soccer. So we actually put an online platform together that basically reached out to kids through a computer, through Zoom. And that was based upon doing videos, soccer training videos that they could do in their back gardens. We had quizzes, we had assignments that we gave the players to connect with. We did a lot of college prep work. We had a juggle club, we had activities, we had prizes, we had a whole slew of things that we had to create to continually connect with our players and their families. And that went on for a good 10 to 12 weeks on a weekly basis. And it was just another way of connecting with our players and just providing them opportunities to stay within the game, to connect with the game, even though it was in their own backyards or at the houses, So it was definitely different and very challenging.
Yeah, and of course, clubs across the country found different ways to implement those Zoom sessions. And I guess what was the response from the kids? The kids these days are so, they're online all the time anyway, right? But what was the response? I know there was, obviously some concern of kids not having the exercise, but being able to give them that ability to at least train on their own. What was the effect of that, do you think? What did you see the response being from the players?
The response was very, very positive. I think it got to the stage that parents were kind of running out of ideas of what to do with their children at home at times.
Yeah.
So whenever there was a team Zoom call or a personal call, I think that was reviewed very positively because we did give them an opportunity to do a lot of training on their own, one-on-one with a ball in the back garden or in the garage or wherever it was. So I think it was a breath of fresh air for these activities to be provided for our players to keep them connected and actually still enjoying the game of soccer, even though they weren't around with their teammates and they weren't part of a team. They weren't getting a training session as such in a team format or a game day on a Saturday and Sunday. I think we provided a lot of information and activities to support the first initial 12 weeks when we're on fully lockdown. So I think it was reviewed as a very positive experience based upon the environment that we were provided. So it worked out okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And what about on the coaching side? Because I know you as coaches get so used to that cadence of, every year there's a tournament on this weekend. There's, we're traveling, we're playing games, almost year round. What was the adjustment like and getting used to doing these Zoom sessions and just the organization overall? How did it show about the adaptability of soccer people and what you were able to do as an organization?
Well, in terms of planning and our events and our activities, naturally, we really didn't understand what COVID was because it was continually changing daily. Right at the very beginning, we really didn't know much about it. You read about it, you were told things, but you had to be creative in what you did day by day, week by week. And we looked at our calendar for the next 30 days, 60, 90, what events were coming up. And we had to make the decisions of canceling certain things. we'd put a lot of work into certain events that were coming up, but unfortunately, for the betterment of the club, we had to cancel. We had a golf event, our yearly fundraiser, that was cancelled in March. So that was a bad blow for us. And as well, we had events in the month of May for some tournaments that we cancelled. We cancelled a 3-on-3 event in April. So there was 3 or 4 events that we'd planned for the year that we had to cancel, and naturally, unfortunately, the kids didn't get the chance to enjoy those events. And so eventually we were allowed to get back onto the fields with very small numbers at the month of June. So we rolled out a program where one player, one ball in their own space. We started with that in the early weeks of June, where we had to put all the protocols in place for all our facilities, that players would come in through a certain way of entering a field, they would exit, they would have their own little water station, they would train within their own grid to start the process off. And so we started to bring things back very, very slowly for certain areas, certain ages. And then as the month of June went on, we could change up our numbers based upon the local protocols, what the health and governing bodies were telling us, what our local soccer governing bodies were telling us, what the local county, the state of Texas, we were taking all this information in and putting all this together in terms of a plan for what we could do in the month of June. And that kind of led us into the month of July, where we started our soccer camps. It was a revised version of our soccer camps. We usually have about 50 or 60 camps during that period of June and July, but we had to cancel them in June. We started those up again in July, but we weren't really sure what the members really needed or wanted or wanted to get involved with. So we put some options out there, and it was a case-by-case basis, whether or not their families and the kids felt it safe or were comfortable coming back into the environment of youth soccer. So we did put a lot of protocols in place. We definitely listened to our members, and I think that was a very important, crucial step, was listening to the feedback of our members. We did a survey in the latter part of June and July to a certain area of the club to find out what our members were thinking. Were they potentially going to be coming back in the fall, starting in August? So I think, you couldn't really plan too far ahead because this whole thing was very fluid.
Right.
So, but I thought we did a really good job of presenting our June and July, what COVID was and how we could help our customers and our players. And then we started to ramp up our operations again in August.
Yeah, no, and that ramp back up, I know was complicated on a number of different fronts, but especially, a club such as yours, where you've got fields in different jurisdictions, different places around the area, how much did you face that of field availability and just, the different guidelines and things? You've got your own protocols you're putting in place. There's different guidelines based on the different areas. And then on top of that, once you did start with matches, different leagues had different protocols even. How did you weigh all of that? And what was that process like of figuring out what you could do and where you could do it?
Yeah, I think we looked at the whole bigger picture of, okay, let's look at the club of what we've offered in the past. And then we would look at our geographic campuses because as you've just said, and you're correct, every campus or every area had different rules and protocols in place. Some are in different counties. Some have different rules with different judges. Some were more lenient, some weren't. Some of our facilities are on private grounds, so we had to take that into consideration. So I think we looked at all the different areas that we run our programming within the Houston market and just adapt to that area. So certain ages potentially didn't start all at the same time. Certain ages came back at a later date. So I think we had to be flexible, and we had to review all the different rules, the restrictions, the protocols that were put in place, and just build a program based upon those facts. It wasn't something that we could roll out to the entire club. This is what we're going to do on July 1. This is what we're going to do on August, because we had to communicate with all the local governing bodies and the state officials and the health guidelines to make sure that we were doing our operations in a safe procedure, in a safe manner. So every area was different. That's why we had to have daily, weekly calls into our directors of coaching and have different plans of actions based upon the Houston market. So it was challenging, to say the least. And then you get back into your league play in August, and there's rules there that you have to make sure that you manage those very, very well. And we're continuing doing that right now. And we're in the month of February. There's still some guidelines in place that the health and safety of our players and our families is the number one concern. So we have to make sure we're following those procedures and protocols on a daily basis.
Yeah, in terms of health and safety, I mean, a lot of the return of play that people followed as far as fans of things was, in these bubbles and in these, big colleges or these, big professional leagues where there's testing happening every day. And of course, as a youth soccer organization, that's not something, you necessarily had access to. But tell me about the different research and the studies and the experience that you had, just making families feel comfortable and how much, how did that process go of, now we know that, soccer and outdoor activities are fairly safe, but, those early days, how complicated was that? And how did you go about making the families feel comfortable?
I think we had to listen to the families and to the customers. We would provide some options, some opportunities, but it was totally up to the family, parents, if they felt comfortable getting back into youth soccer. Nothing was mandated. It was, if you feel comfortable, if you want to get your child back into soccer camps or to our youth program starting in August, it is totally up to you. And if it's too quick, there's opportunities for you to come in further down in the following months. So I think listening to your members was a crucial part of the summer period, and then rolling out the programs throughout the fall. And if parents and families were still sitting on the fence, they weren't sure, they wanted to get more information about what COVID was, how it was affecting youth sports, and that was fine. We're still bringing people back in now that haven't been with us for the fall because they really didn't want to get back into youth soccer. So people came in at their own stages, people came back to the teams, and we had to address that and maybe change scheduling, change training sessions, adapt on a day-to-day basis based upon numbers through the system. But that's part of any business, that you just have to adapt and come up with a game plan that makes sense for the player, makes sense for the families and the geographic areas that you're continuing to serve.
Yeah. How has registration been affected by the past year? I imagine things dipped for a while, and but I have heard as far as camps and things here locally in Austin that some camps actually filled up more than they had in the past. Parents wanting to get their kids out of the house and active again. What have you seen over there in Houston, and how has it maybe been consistent or not across the state and the different regions that you've been in touch with?
Yeah, all started naturally. Our numbers were down because of the impact, the initial impact that people really didn't
Hmm.
know what was going on what to actually get involved with. So our numbers at the beginning were dramatically down. But as months went by, numbers started to up, and when they understood more about the COVID and what it all meant, uh, our numbers right now are very, very healthy. We're seeing many, many more people coming back into the system at all the different levels that we offer. But if you reflect and look back, and I'll be truthful, I think it was June and May, our numbers were extremely low because we really didn't know where this was going to take us, you know. So, but again, I think for any business, Mr. Gemmell, Don Gemmell, our technical director, he continually reminds us that when you run a business, you have to plan for a rainy day. You know,
Right.
we're in the Houston market and we get hurricanes. So what happens if a hurricane or a problem happens to your business? Can you keep the business moving forward? And we're financially doing very, very well. Our business model is very secure. So having those financial resources to help us get through a 3 month, 6 month, 9 month period where potentially your registration numbers take a little bit of a hit was definitely challenging. But I will I will say that we didn't furlough any employees. We kept them all on a payroll. We honored that through the entire process because our coaching staff are a huge component of our club. They are the club. They keep the club moving forward. So I think, you know, one of the things we continually have to learn from this whole procedure is that from a financial point of view, you do have to be financially secure. You don't know what's going to happen around the corner. There will be another rainy day that something will happen. In the past, we've had a hurricane or two. Our offices have closed down. Our fields are closed. And we've had our challenges, but we've always found a way to work through these based upon our business structure in place. So, and I think that bodes very well for the future.
Yeah, and in terms of that future, I guess one of the things that has come up, I think, a lot is travel. But in terms of things that you've learned through this period about youth soccer and what's sustainable and what you know what changes have had to been made. What lessons have you learned? What do you think from this COVID experience might continue on? Whether it's those virtual training sessions, whether it's decreased travel, more regional play. What do you think about what might stick around as we look ahead?
Hopefully, COVID doesn't stick around and we get rid of it
Not
as
COVID,
quick
yeah.
as we can. But yeah, you just touched on the travel side of things. Our traveling side of things, the hotel stay that we usually do with a lot of our competitive teams. Sometimes now we're going up to Dallas, to Austin, to San Antonio. We'll go up on the day of. We'll play the game and we'll come back on the same day because we don't do a hotel stay. And it's the same for teams coming into us. Some teams are still are in that way of thinking. They don't want to stay in a hotel yet. So there's that barrier that they have to get through for travel, for youth soccer travel. So that's definitely changed. That's something new. Will that ever come back? I think so, because, and I think the traveling side of things will gain momentum when there's more positive news about the COVID side of things. Because it's always good for a player to go in if we're traveling into Dallas, which is a 3-hour drive time, or San Antonio or Austin, to go in the night before to get a good night's rest, and then you play the games or an event or a tournament. A lot
Right.
of our games that we've had in the last fall have started scheduling at 12 o'clock on a lunchtime, so it allows visiting teams to come into us on the day of, travel in and travel back. So again, the changing of schedules, there's been quite a few teams that have cancelled certain games, and we've done the same. We've had a player would catch COVID, or so we've had to cancel a game because of that, and you just have to reschedule the games on another weekend and change that protocol up based upon the visiting teams coming in that were coming in but cancelled at the last minute. So I don't think this COVID thing is nearly over yet, but you
Right.
just got to adapt on a daily basis and just get it done.
Yeah, I guess that's got to be a lesson that you've learned is just to remain nimble. We were just talking before we came on here about the weather and how a lot of things are going to be canceled this weekend, but this is a little bit different, right? Where you're talking about a virus that we're not quite sure when it's going to lift and when the vaccines will be distributed to a level where life gets back to normal. I guess what has it taught you and your organization about staying nimble and being able to sort of roll with the punches and not being able to plan so long term like I imagine you're used to in this space.
Yeah, definitely agree there. I don't know if we can predict in youth soccer what's going to happen in the next 3 months, the next 30 days. You've got to remain fluid in terms of your planning, your operations. They have to be flexible. You have to change and adapt on a day-to-day basis, a week to week. You just mentioned about the weather right now here in Texas. We've cancelled our operations this coming weekend because of that. So, 6,000 plus kids potentially won't be going out to the fields to play soccer based upon the weather. So that's taken some planning and some changes. So I we're supposed to be married to our calendars. We like to plan 6 months, 12 months, 18 months ahead of where we are now in terms of our operations. But, unfortunately, we can't do that fully because we don't know where this COVID is taking us. So I think we have to be flexible and fluid and willing to change and to provide new options on a daily basis, really. So
Do you think it's sort of brought the community together a little bit, having to having every organization go through these things at the same time? How much have you been able to learn from other clubs and other leagues and friends and colleagues throughout throughout the country? Has there been some maybe relationships or learning that's happened there?
I think every day is learning. It really is.
Right.
Whether or not it is looking at how other clubs have done certain things or other governing bodies that we can learn from, or is there advice we can find from health authorities? Uh, I don't think we have all the answers by any means. And I think we always have to continually look out there and listen and learn and pick up ideas. Maybe there's other clubs out there that do things slightly different than we can actually pick up that idea and put it into action plan within our club. I don't think there's a definitive pathway that you can say that's the number one route that we're going down because that's what it's telling us. I think you can go down that pathway. That pathway is going to change. It's going to change daily. It's going to change weekly. And you've got to be flexible to move in different areas and to listen and learn. I think that's part of this whole process is the education that we gain from all our friends, our contacts, our personnel out there in youth soccer. It's it's one family of developing soccer players in different areas of the country and different cities. And I think we can learn and live and operate by understanding how other groups do things and take some suggestions and put them into our ways of running a soccer business. So I think that's what we'll continue to do.
Yeah. In terms of what a match day experience is like for these kids right now, can you sort of walk me through, what that's like during COVID times and maybe how it's changed since, the summer when you were first coming back? What's it like, walking into a training session or a match right now? And, how abnormal does it feel to you as somebody who's been doing this for so many years? Or is it starting to feel normal?
It's definitely not normal. We're trying to get as close to normal if and when possible. From a training session side of things, our players will arrive at a complex. They'll come to the fields. They go straight to an area where they can put their bags down, their water bottles, their balls. They'll have a separate space which is coned out for each player. So they come in and report into the coach. They'll go to their own specific area. So the distancing measures are in place. We'll conduct a training session. They'll go back to their private areas for their water breaks. There's no major huddles. We do train with the regular numbers. So there's definitely some challenges and some new things that the kids have to do. We ask our parents to distance socially on a sideline. We have the parents on the opposite sides of the players and the coaches. So we have to do that with all our events, with all our facilities. So that's definitely new for our tournaments. There's a whole slew of protocols that we send out, we map out, we send it out to all our visiting teams. We have protocols in place for our visiting teams when they play league games on our facilities. And it's a constant reminder and an education to our players that we're still in the pandemic and we have to be very, very careful. Our coaching staff are wearing masks, and there's no pictures or group huddles, all those. So that side of things, it's pretty difficult because soccer is a very close-knit community of people, and so we don't have group meetings with parents. We don't go into group meetings in buildings. It's purely outside. Certain facilities will have parents and players walk in one entrance. They'll leave through another entrance. So it's constant. It's COVID time. So it is what it is.
Right.
You just make the best out of a bad position, but I think we're getting there. I think the kids are enjoying it. There's an opportunity for them to come out and play. And to be really honest, the parents really support in what we do because they also understand that healthy lifestyles for children, for youth soccer players, getting them back on the fields and doing all the close to normal activities is very, very important.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is because in addition to the health and safety having to do with COVID, I know that mental health has been a massive issue across the landscape and especially in schools and as these kids have had their lives sort of upended. And I wonder if it's sort of reinforced to you the value of what you're providing these kids and being able to get them back active, get them on the fields and what you've heard from parents and seen on that end as far as, getting them back in the summer and maybe the effects that's had on seeing some more smiles and some more experiences for these kids.
Definitely, by providing an opportunity for for soccer, for a healthy lifestyle, for physical activity for children. I think that's very, very important. It was only a couple of weeks ago we had a tournament, and one of the parents came up to us at the HQ area and came over and thanked us for providing this event, for putting it on, for doing all the protocols in place to get it through the system and provide an opportunity for. It was a showcase that we put on, and this parent said, keep doing what you're doing, because it's so important for these kids to get out and run around and exercise and get back into some way of normal life where they could interact with other players, they could compete a little bit, they could have their friendships, because it is a big important part of a young person growing up, is all those things that we've mentioned. So we'll continue to do that.
Yeah, and of course, like you said, the pandemic's not going away, but also the effects of it economically, which I know that like you mentioned, you felt that as a club, and you've been able to sort of navigate things. But there's a cost to youth soccer for these individual families as well. I wonder, how much you've run into that and spoken to families, and how much more important than ever that affordability issue is, and what you can do to allow parents and families and youth. It's not just you guys, right? It's everybody across the landscape, keeping these kids active and keeping them involved in soccer despite those costs and those challenges.
Yes, definitely. The cost of youth soccer is always a factor, but we are very, very willing to work with any family we have in the club to make sure that these kids continue to have an opportunity through this period of time when potentially that family is really suffering, in terms of maybe the mother or father was laid out of work. There's other problems which has been caused by COVID. We'll continually work with our players and our families to make sure that opportunity is still there. I don't think we've never turned away a family or a potential new customer into the club from a financial point of view. We'll make it work. We raise money throughout the year to help with scholarships. So last year we raised about $100,000 to help with all our scholarship players and families, and then that was pre-COVID. So where there's a will, there's a way. We can work with any person who wants to come into the club or is a current member who is struggling. Basically, we just ask them to pick up the phone or send us an email, and our administrative support team are there to help, because that's what we're about, is helping players, helping the families enjoy this game of soccer, and we've got to continually listen and connect with our members, because people are struggling. It's very important that we continue to do that and make sure the opportunity is there for the kids.
Yeah, just getting ready to wrap up here with Simon Boddison, the Director of Soccer Operations for the Houston Dynamo Dash Academy. But before I let you go, Simon, thanks again for joining us. And I just wanted to give you a chance to talk a little bit about maybe what's coming up for the Dynamo Dash Academy. Like we talked about, it's hard to plan for the future a little bit right now, but what are you excited about with the club? What teams are standing out, or what opportunities are coming up?
Well, I think I used the phrase at the beginning of the show, soccer never sleeps, and it's definitely, we live and die by that. Every day is very, very busy. We're expanding. We're growing into multiple markets. We have a responsibility to provide a positive soccer experience for any player in the Houston market. We've got events coming up. We've got 3-on-3 tournaments in the month of April. We've got a golf event coming up in March. We've got our league play through February through June for multiple leagues. We've got a lot of travel for our elite teams. We've got a new rec tournament that we're starting in May. We've got a Memorial Day weekend affair, and then we'll roll straight into our summer programs in June and July. So it's like a train. This train keeps going on a monthly basis. We're excited to continue to move forward, and we thoroughly look forward to continuing developing these plays and providing a platform for pure enjoyment for these youngsters.
Yeah, if you can keep it going through this, there's no telling what youth soccer can sort of go through. But really appreciate you again joining us to talk about youth soccer during COVID, keeping youth soccer safe during the pandemic. And I hope everybody's been enjoying all of these panels that we've had during the 2021 Texas Soccer Summit. Coming up at 3:00 Central Time, we've got our next panel, which will be on the Black Lives Matter movement. And last year saw the soccer community raise its voice in protest of systemic racism and rampant injustice of the world, with organizations like Black Players for Change and the USL Black Players Alliance organizing. In this panel, members of those and other organizations will discuss the role of the beautiful game can play in bringing equality to our society. So that's going to be a really exciting one. We've got representatives from the Dash. Jemiah Fields is going to be joining us, along with Shadea and Demalakin from USC. And I know Kyrie Shelton, Lone Star Product, who's now with Sporting Kansas City, is going to be there as well. And along with Tyler David, who's the Director of Community Relations for the USL PBA. So that should be a really exciting panel. Again, Simon Boddison, thank you so much for joining us, and hope everybody enjoys the rest of the 2021 Texas Soccer Summit.
Thank you.
Again, thanks everybody for joining us on the 2021 Texas Soccer Summit. Once again, I hope you can stick around for the rest of our panels today. Thanks for joining us.